Welcome back. It is time now for business news. I'm joined by our business editor, Matthew Warren. Of course, François Hollande's visit to China is the thing this morning, and it's being billed as something of a sales trip.
Yeah, that's right. And, well, to make that clear, he's taken 60 business people with him on that trip to China. With the French economy struggling to find growth, it's the moment, really, for France to seek strengthening of those trade ties with the country. Or more in this report from Siobhan Silk.
It's a diplomatic trip, but above all, a sales call. President François Hollande's priority on his first visit to China is selling France. He and the 60 company bosses who've travelled with him are looking enviously at Germany's trade with the world's second biggest economy. Germany accounts for 5% of China's foreign trade, significantly ahead of France at just 1.3%. France is making headway. Exports to China went up 12% in 2012 and they're now worth 15 billion euros a year. But the trade in the other direction has been increasing at a greater rate. The 26 billion euro difference is a massive 40% of France's annual trade deficit. Up to now, the spotlight has been on big, high-profile contracts by the likes of Airbus, Renault and the energy giant Areva. But to close the gap, France is looking to medium-sized enterprises. Thousands already export to China, but up to now few have set up shop in the country. Rather than just heavy industry, they're tied to sectors such as wines and regional food products and the ever-lucrative luxury goods market, as well as the service and health industries. And another one of France's major exports, film, could be an important creator of new business. French director Luc Besson has been visiting Beijing too. He struck a deal to make 15 movies in cooperation with Chinese producers over the next 3 years.
Well, earlier I spoke to our Beijing correspondent Henry Morton. I asked him what we can expect to see in terms of deals from this trip.
The Chinese and French expect to sign large deals for nuclear generation, as well as a joint venture in Africa, in Niger, for a uranium mine. Airbus also expected to do well out of this. Some 150 planes thought to be wanted by the Chinese. And Renault also looking to sign a deal for a factory to produce 150,000 vehicles a year here in China.
Henry Morton, who's speaking to us a little while ago there, Matthew. Tell us, how are the markets doing this Thursday morning?
Looking pretty good so far, making some gains, at least in Asia. We can see how markets have been trading in the Thursday session. And the Shanghai Composite earlier was trading down, but now it's moved up. And now it looks like it's just slipping back a little bit as well, although the Hang Seng is moving up. Now, what's going on there? Lots of company results coming out, which is tending to shift the market up and down. Nothing to do with François Hollande's visit, of course, but also just a piece of news from Japan, confirmation that Japan and the US will start talks on opening up trade. Now, the Obama administration told Congress that Japan will formally now be part of these talks, which are called the Trans-Pacific Partnership Talks, or TPP, which is a bit easier. They're now in their 4th year. These trade talks tend to take a long time to iron out all of the wrangles. 10 other countries involved in that. Now, these talks, or at least letting Japan in, not universally popular, particularly amongst the American car makers. They're worried that the likes of Toyota, Honda are going to get a bit of too much of an advantage in the American car market, potentially hurting them.
Now, coming back to Europe for a moment and to Italy to have a look, Matthew, at the man who hopes to form a new government and who's been speaking out already against austerity.
Yes, that's right. Enrico Letta, the Prime Minister designate there. Now he's got this tricky task of pulling together a government from various parts of the Italian political landscape. Well, one thing's already clear, probably win him some popularity there, that he's not a fan of austerity. He came out of a meeting with the Italian president saying that focusing on austerity is no longer enough. Now, the other challenge he's going to have is that all these efforts to reform the Italian economy have effectively just stalled. Remember, Mario Monti put a lot of these things in place, and that was liked by Brussels and Berlin. Well, as this analyst explains, Letta's going to be under pressure now to get things moving again.
I think he will have a much harder life at the Euro level, simply because I think the Brussels in particular, Berlin, they are still pushing for very strong reforms. In Italy, of course, there has been already made some progress under the Monti administration, but now, of course, given that there was a 2-month deadlock, nothing has really moved on, and that, of course, costed Italy also growth, costed important growth that will very likely, I think, also be mirrored in the Italy's public finance data that we will see later in the year.
Okay, well, let's get some of the day's company news now. And the household goods maker Procter Gamble disappointed investors with its latest results. Sales there rose by 2% in the first 3 months of the year, but that was less than forecast. Shares in the company closed down 6%.
Shares also down for the online gaming company Zynga. The maker of games including Farmville hit profit targets, but said the number of players had fallen back. Zynga has struggled since Facebook reduced exposure to its games. Active monthly users slipped by 13% to 253 million.
But investors liked the look of results from the aircraft maker Boeing. Profits there rose 20% in the first quarter to $1.1 billion. Now, that was despite those battery problems it's had with the 787 Dreamliner. Well, after getting approval for a solution to that problem, Boeing hopes to start deliveries again in mid-May. Shares in Boeing up 3%.
Now, here, of course, in France, Matthew, unemployment, a huge problem still. There is one notable exception, though, in the French economy.
Yes. Now, just as we saw there with Boeing doing pretty well, Airbus is also having a pretty good run, and the aviation sector has been one that's been pretty successful. Figures will be out later this Thursday on unemployment in France. It's been rising for several months in a row. Well, while that jobless total continues to go up, aircraft manufacturers, one sector offering hope, particularly for younger workers. This report from Georgia Calvin-Smith.
Qu'est-ce qui se passe là?
Sabrina's learning how to maintain this A380 cabin. She's on an apprenticeship, getting on-the-job experience at the AFPA Adult Training Centre in Toulouse. Having spent months unemployed and working only short-term contracts, the 23-year-old thinks she's finally found the career for her.
I always managed to find small jobs here and there, but I was looking for something permanent and to be able to count on my future. I wasn't able to find what I was looking for, so I couldn't settle on a profession.
Last March, Airbus snagged a record order for 234 A320 planes. Good news for job seekers around Toulouse. Along with Sabrina, around 50 people have begun training in various aspects of aircraft manufacture.
We're going to have to work on 11 aircraft a month. We're going to have to build them and also install the cabins inside, so the subcontractors and Airbus need people.
In its factory in the southwest, supplier Latécoère manufactures doors and other aircraft parts for Airbus. It employs over 1,000 people in France, 70 of whom are apprentices.
We take on people from all kinds of backgrounds and experience, but who either through an affinity with the work or through ability show some potential.
Competition's tough. Though the aviation industry may hire around 10,000 people a year, many hopefuls don't get taken on. The preference is for young applicants or candidates with experience in manual trades. Latécoère says, though, it is trying to widen the net by encouraging more women to get on board.
We're just coming out to the end of business news. Before we go, though, it is the question of the morning, Matthew, whether anyone would pay more than $100,000 for a cup of coffee.
It seems like some people would if it's a cup of coffee with the boss of Apple, Tim Cook, at least according to a charity auction that's going on at the moment on this website. There are bids currently at $160,000 for an hour with Tim Cook, and it's still a few weeks to go until that auction takes place. So I don't know if you're feeling rich, Melissa, but I can think of better ways to spend my money.
Exactly. I have a few ideas myself. Just coming up to 8 o'clock here in Paris. In a couple of minutes, the very latest international headlines. Do stay with us.